All right, thank you for tuning in to the Nick Crawford Show. We have a full show today. Guest host. We're going to be talking about the movie of the week, and a contributor, Bryan Babb, will be on the show talking about the Revenant. We're also going to have a short story on Ted Cruz and why there is still hope. Also, we're going to have our guest host, Drew. He's going to be talking about some sports-related topics in the show today, as well as how I'm about to lose my mind about the Super Bowl and some of the politically correct crap that is going on. I had to stop reading the news today because of how out of control it was. And then we're also going to talk about poor Deborah Bush. Some things that he's having to do that just is not working. He's having to call mommy, and it's just not going to happen for him. And then lastly, we're going to have Ira Lee talking about some different bills and what's going on in the state of Tennessee right now. And all of that starts right now.
You are listening to The Nick Crawford Show. Current, campus, common sense. Bringing the day's latest insanities to you live online.
All right, well, first up, we have our guest host today, Bryan Babb. He will be on the show. But first, I'd like to introduce two new hosts that are going to be on this show. They're going to be here Tuesdays, Thursdays, possibly Fridays, so they're going to be regular guest hosts of the show. The first one is Ira Lee. Ira is an undergraduate student at the University of Tennessee. He's pursuing a master's degree in mechanical engineering with a minor in business management. Ira and I met through student government. He's very politically active, politically minded, and he's had some firsthand experience actually at the state level of politics in Atlanta at Georgia. He served as a page many times, worked under different lobbyists, legislators, and even helped out with the governor a few times. So we're happy to have Ira with the show. We also have Drew Adams on the show. Drew is a sophomore at the University of Tennessee, and he is a sports management major. Drew has had some history in covering sports, different games. He, in high school, led the live show on what was going on at different sports activities. So he's very knowledgeable, knows what he's talking about as a sports enthusiast. So we're very lucky to have the both of them. So what we're going to do is Bryan Babb is going to come on, and he's going to be talking about the Revenant. So we have here the trailer for the Revenant to play for you real quick, and then we'll get right into Bryan.
Safe thing to do is track a new course back up online.
Then what we gonna do? Sit out there like a bunch of goddamn ducks?
You and your half-breed son get to walk on out?
I'm talking to you.
The proper thing to do would be to finish him off quick.
He's to be cared for as long as necessary.
I understand.
Get away! Help!
What happened?
We did what we had to do.
All right, so you obviously couldn't hear or see everything that was going on in that, but obviously a very action-packed movie right there. So there's lots of things going on with the movie The Revenant, and you're going to want to see that according to Bryan. So now we have with us Bryan Babb. Bryan, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with us. Sorry, the connection's kind of bad out here.
All right, well, we're glad you could be here today. For those of you that don't know Bryan is a student at Dalton State College in Georgia. He has many activities he's a part of about talking about movies, camping, politics, and he's also worked a lot in service. He's worked with hurricane relief, tornado relief, so he's done a bunch of different things, but right now he happens just to be an enthusiast in movies. So, Bryan, what do you got for us on The Revenant?
Of The Revenant? Well, I got a lot of things here about it. For starters, I'll get to it later, but there is a political aspect of the movie, which was actually handled surprisingly well, especially for a Leonardo DiCaprio Hollywood movie. But most of all, it was a compelling story with interesting characters, and I'll dive right into that. The story itself is familiar. It's a basic revenge story, but it's almost if you're there for the revenge aspect, you're not going to be satisfied. Because it's bare bones revenge. It's the journey to get your revenge. But it's done in such a way where it's almost refreshing in its simplicity. It's not another Count of Monte Cristo. It's just a simple, straightforward narrative. And it focuses on the characters and the struggles and their past. And it's so effective. So, if you go on to the characters, I suppose, the star, basically the one who carries the entire film, is Leonardo DiCaprio as Hugh Glass, a fur trapper. Now, he is in the Northeast. I want to say it's pre-French and Indian War. It might be post. I'm not exactly sure the exact date, but we know that he is no, it's post-French and Indian War. It's during I think it's early America, actually. But he is sort of like a Shakespearean tragic hero. He's going through a lot, and he's kind of having to live with his pain, and of course DiCaprio's performance is phenomenal. Which is just, it's funny to say that because I've never been a huge DiCaprio fan. In Titanic, Shutter Island, he just doesn't appeal to me. But maybe it's because he doesn't say a whole lot. I don't have to really think about it being DiCaprio, but for whatever reason he nailed it. And it's all about how he has to go after one of his former companions because he actually murdered his son. So DiCaprio has to move across northeast United States in the snow. It's the height of winter. And you get to see a struggle where he comes from, how he copes with his loss, and how he's driven by his need for revenge. And it's a fascinating character study. It's something I haven't seen since, like, Count of Monte Cristo, where he dwells on it. It's all he has to think about, because other than just basic survival, he has to get back to kill Fitzgerald, the man who killed his son, which leads me to my next talking point. Fitzgerald, he's played by Tom Hardy, who, Dark Knight Rises, Mad Max. It's been a good year for him, especially with Mad Max. But he is almost as good as DiCaprio in this movie, which is saying a lot. Tom Hardy has kind of become a powerhouse actor out of nowhere. And one of the reasons I love this character is because he's realistic. You have to remember, DiCaprio's son, who Hardy ended up killing, was a Native American. And he was like the illegitimate son of a white man and a Native American woman. So,
well, I guess we should have put at the beginning of this segment a spoiler alert that giving away some lines here. But I think some of the co-hosts have some questions for you on this.
Hey, Bryan, this is Drew going to jump in here really quick. My father actually accompanied me to the movie theater, which for him is just like, I don't know, it's just not a normal occurrence, for him. And he saw the previews. I showed him the trailer for The Revenant, and he was fired up. And now he's not a Leonardo DiCaprio. I like Leo personally; he's my favorite actor. But he's not really into the whole movie scene and everything. But something about The Revenant brings out, like the old Western type movies where survival and things like that. So I just wanted you to talk about the kind of audience appeal, because obviously it appealed to a very wide range of people. If I'm able to get my father to go sit and watch a 2.5-hour movie with me, then that's huge, you know?
Yeah, definitely. If we're just talking about audience, then it's not a family picture. It's brutally realistic, and I love that about this movie. I like that it kind of takes the goat by the horns and doesn't hold back. It shows you what it would have been like. And so you're not going to take your family to see this, like the kids. You know, it's not something you want to go see with your little girl or your little boy, but definitely the audience, it's not specifically male or specifically female, but this is a character story, and it's mature. And so I can understand how someone like maybe your dad or even someone who hasn't really any experience with this kind of movie might come out of here really fascinated with not only, like you said, the survival aspect, but the fact that since it's such a compelling character drama, you can identify with these characters in such a way where no one is unrealistic. They're understandable, and you can find yourself connecting with them on a deeper emotional level than otherwise you might be able to.
All right, well, thanks so much for the movie review on that one. But we also spoke how we want to talk a little bit about the New Hampshire primary, since that is today. And I know you have some political views on that. Just a quick poll update on that. I have a list of different polls here, and every single one of them has Trump in the lead by about a 13 to 12% margin. Now, it's fluctuated ever since the race started. Trump, at one point, I think had like a almost 40% lead or something like that, but it's pretty much leveled off, with actually John Kasich being up there, Jeb Bush. The 3 counties that voted today, it's a 3-way tie between Trump, Cruz, Kasich, all receiving 9 points so far, and that's just the latest information that I have. Do you have any takes on New Hampshire? What you think's going to happen? Is there an underdog you're pulling for? What are your thoughts on New Hampshire?
New Hampshire, well, at least on the Republican side of things, I'm obviously a big fan of Ted Cruz, especially his health care ideas about deregulating a lot of interstate trade. So I'm obviously a Cruz fan. But for New Hampshire specifically, still rooting for him. I'm surprised to see Trump come out on top like he has, especially in a state like New Hampshire, which I've always kind of understood to be blue. I mean, pretty democratic. So even the Republican side, I feel like would be leaning more towards not Trump.
Right, and I think that's one reason why Kasich, even though many people, including myself, are saying he should have dropped out months ago, but a reason why a more moderate candidate like Jeb Bush, John Kasich, would be doing better in this state. I also forgot to leave out the Democrats. For right now, Hillary Clinton's drinking her wine because Sanders is beating her 17-9 votes, just as what's coming in so far. And that can't be looking good for the Hillary camp.
Oh, definitely not. And I have mixed emotions about this because I'm confident that if Hillary makes it to national level, if it comes down to her as the Democratic candidate, that she's not going to win. But Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, he has a shot. He has a real shot at winning. He makes it to national level. And that's what kind of makes me nervous. That's why I like him far better than Clinton. Mostly because I don't believe he is downright sinister. I am a little nervous that if he comes out on top overall, we're going to still get his presidency. And he is a socialist, and that's the last thing this country needs right now, especially with the budget deficit, the amount of debt we've accumulated. All of his programs are free college, free health care, free everything. It's going to put us in the hole way worse than we already are. And but at the same time, though, I'm glad that he's beating Hillary just because it feels somewhat emotionally satisfying to see Hillary being beat just at her own game.
Right.
I feel you, Brian, and this is Drew jumping in again. And I think, Nick, what you're referring to there, the 17-9 votes, is that like state delegates that they have so far? Is that what they've accrued? Okay, so you've got Sanders beating Hillary 17-9, and I looked up Bernie Sanders' policies last night. Don't ask me why. It was for a school project. I'm not interested in Bernie Sanders whatsoever. But one of the things that I found interesting about Bernie Sanders is that he's taking a page out of the FDR playbook, out of the the New Deal playbook. If listeners are familiar with the New Deal, he is basically saying that he wants the tax revenues that he's going to get from wealthy individuals from raising corporate taxes and pulling money from offshore banks back into the United States so that it can be taxable. He wants to take revenue from that and create an entire infrastructure government-run jobs program to rebuild bridges, roads, anything infrastructure related. And I thought that it was interesting that a modern-day socialist would go back to an FDR playbook. Now, FDR was far from being a conservative. I mean, he was obviously a Democratic president, and back then he was basically king of America. I mean, if he hadn't died, then he still might be president. I mean, it's ridiculous how popular he was back then. But Bernie Sanders,
so popular that right after he was out of office, they passed term limits, making sure no one like FDR could ever be president for that long again. But
yeah, that was how popular he was. Yeah, so I just wanted to hear your take on on the infrastructure plan, and on its surface, it sounds FDR did it. Why can't we do it again? Why can't Bernie do it? But there are grave historical differences between the Depression, obviously, and what we're facing now in this country. So I just wanted to hear your take on the Bernie infrastructure plan, if you're familiar with it.
I've heard of the plan, and yeah, on the surface, it sounds like a good plan. I mean, it's from the FDR playbook, and FDR, even though I don't agree with most of his policies, he was at heart. I feel like he was doing what was best for the country at the time. That's what he thought was best, because we were coming out of the Great Depression. People needed jobs. And he made those jobs, they weren't necessary in the sense where the infrastructure had to be redone. He did it because it was necessary for the people to get jobs. But we're not in the Great Depression anymore. We are in the modern era. We had a mild recession about maybe 2 years ago. And people have been calling that back and saying that was the second Great Depression. They've been exaggerating it so we can say we need more government programs, we need more government jobs. And all it does is create a dependency on government money, and more people are living off taxes instead of off of earned wages. And that's my issue. I don't want more people that just siphoning off the government. I want people to defeat the purpose of a capitalist economy. We need small businesses. We need more of that. We need more independence, because redoing the American infrastructure, while I'm sure it's necessary in some places, it's not high on the list of the nation's priorities. And while it would provide jobs, and it would actually probably boost the economy in the short run, in the long run, we would see a fall in the demand for this kind of stuff. When you see a fall in demand, you'll see the American value of the American dollar's value is going to deflate, and you're going to see the unemployment increase. And that's the real issue I have there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like every Democrat since the Democratic Party was invented or founded has been running on the ideas that the rich is too rich, that we need to rebuild our bridges and fix our roads and create jobs. But it seems like it always boils down to the same thing, and that's that they are so mistaken. That's fine. I agree. American infrastructure should be the best in the world, but it doesn't come from the government. If we make something better or if we improve something, it should not be from Congress passing something and then the president, sending the money that way. It should be something completely different. It should be given to us because it's going to be, in the end, run better. It's probably going to be funded better because it's not a whole lot of waste because you're accountable when it's your own money. It's funny. You can buy a whole lot of nice things when you're not the one that has to pay the bills. And so I think that's a lot that's going on in New Hampshire right now, that people are having to decide that this election really is important, and that's why I just don't I do, but I don't understand the Bernie Sanders phenomenon. It's all of these spoiled brats that are told their entire lives they're winners, they're specials, they deserve the world, and then when they grow up, at least in age, mommy and daddy aren't there anymore, and so they think the government should step in and give them everything as well. And I don't know how they think that's going to work.
They don't understand fundamentals of economics. all the money in our country circulates. It's recyclable. It's like the water cycle. It's not the government is going to turn off more money and we're just going to think that we're already running a deficit. So if someone like Bernie gets elected and we get the free schools, the free health care, that's not going to help us. And people, it's funny, they love to call Republicans entitled and white privilege and that. But they're the ones with a sense of entitlement. They're the ones that can make you able to go to school for free.
Let's not get started on that. That's for a segment a little bit later on the entitlement and how, just different privilege and stuff like that. But I just wanted to put a side note in there where you talked about something Obama said in the State of the Union. I'm drawing a blank on whatever. Oh, deficits, where he said, we have cut the deficits every year for the past 4 years or something like that. Yeah, because in his first years, it skyrocketed so high, it's not cutting the average deficit overall of what it's been every year. He's cutting it compared to his own.
He's cutting it compared to his own deficit that he created, and he's comparing it he's cutting it by sequestration, by shrinking the military. That's how he's cutting it. And in the day and age with ISIS and crises, and you've got North Korea possibly launching a satellite that could drop a nuke or create an electromagnetic pulse, you can't afford to be gutting the military. Ira, do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And you have to remember that cutting the deficit is not the same thing as cutting the debt.
Right.
So, like Nick said a minute ago, whenever he first took office and he had a stimulus package, you have the debt increase so much and exponentially that even though each year from year to year he is cutting the deficit, we are still, going in debt by the second. So even though it sounds like he's accomplishing, oh, yes, I cut the deficit. Well, yeah, in the bigger picture, you're not really cutting the debt that much.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. Well, Bryan, we went a little bit over today, but we've really enjoyed the conversation, so that's completely fine. We're going to have to make sure to have you back on, talk about your next movie, talk about some politics. But thank you so much for joining the program today.
Absolutely.
All right, talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye. All right, well, next up, we're going to be talking about a story from Matt Walsh from The Blaze. I think Matt Walsh really is one of the best and brightest conservative writers of our time. I really think he knows what's going on. He can articulate it well. And he talks about how Ted Cruz has no style and no personality and why that's a good sign that he's winning. Well, the Iowa caucuses are over, and now you can all go back to confusing Iowa with Idaho and Ohio for the next 4 years. I know personally I'm grateful to Iowa for how this all turned out, but it can be nice to get a reprieve from politicians pretending to care about the state. Now they can move on to pretending to care about New Hampshire, then South Carolina, Nevada, the SEC primary, and at least for a few minutes. Some impressive things about Ted Cruz was that he won in an impressive fashion. Not only did he beat Donald Trump by 4 points, but he outperformed the polls by 5 points. Now, I'll have to go get the dictionary out. I thought the definition of winning was first place or maybe outdoing, what was thought. Not getting second, not getting third, and still calling it a win. But we can get back to that. Everyone thought that Trump was energizing the GOP base, but it turns out the folks in Iowa were much more excited about Ted Cruz. This is because, and this is impressive, when you consider the fact that Cruz is running as a small government, issues-oriented conservative. He vigorously opposed ethanol subsidies in Iowa. Again, he opposed ethanol subsidies in Iowa.
Corn.
Thank you. In case any liberals are listening and don't understand big words. And he still won, and not only that, he won Iowa's heaviest corn-producing counties. So he was opposing something from the government that funded the most important part of the economy and won those economies. In an election cycle dominated by pandering big government circus clowns, Cruz stayed boring, stayed on message, and managed the most massive Republican win in the history of states. In the state, I don't know if you knew this, but more Republicans voted for Ted Cruz in a primary in Iowa, more than ever in history. Not the percentage that he got, but more people that voted. As for personality, I admit it, he leaves plenty to be desired, is even kind of off-putting at times. He has no style. He's not much of a charmer. He tells really bad jokes. He has a weird face. He's not entertaining at all. He's not the type of dude you necessarily want to go grab a beer with and spend the whole time giving his list of the most outrageous 20th century Supreme Court decisions. Now, personally, I'm a dork. I think it'd be kind of cool to talk to a guy like Ted Cruz and see what he thought was an important Supreme Court decision. Others probably not. But I'm guessing a lot of people would find it lame and head over to the other end of the bar where Chris Christie's probably shotgunning bottles of Miller Lite. The point is, the people who support Cruz support him because they like his ideas. They think he's competent. They trust him to stick to his principles once he's in office, just like his record shows he always has. You might think there's someone in the race who better fits this bill, at least like, Rand Paul. Rand Paul is a small government libertarian candidate, but for some reason just the GOP would not embrace him. He couldn't get a following, and he had a few issues where he was kind of, out there on, like the military.
He's a jerk. That's partially the reason why people can't get behind him, is because I've met people with personal experience of trying to meet Senator Paul, and he rolled their eyes at him and walked by.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could see him doing it.
I've seen that many times. You can look up videos of interviews or press talking to him. He just doesn't talk to people. Even on the debate stage, he seems like he's whiny. He's argumentative for no reason. I completely agree with that his personality is off. But another point to be made that's important is that Iowa should have been the end of Trump's campaign. It's not. It won't. But it should have been. Because Trump's only point that he has, that his whole campaign is based off, is that he wins. He wins everything. He wins here. He wins there. You want to go play poker with the guy because he can't lose. But up until now, he's always been a winner. I really think an 80-year-old meth addict with $10 million and the whole media in his pocket, because you never know what he's going to say, could probably be doing just as well as Donald Trump, given the attention he's been given. But he runs on that he never loses. He should win because he wins, we're told, and he wins that because he says he wins. But if you look at his record, that's not true. He bankrupted 4 businesses, destroyed 2 marriages, and failed in a huge fashion in many other ventures, sometimes so badly that he's being investigated for fraud. But that was all in the past. Now, after a lifetime of failures, I understand people learn from their mistakes. Some mistakes bigger than others, so you have a lot more to learn. But he's been a reborn, perpetual winner, and winners win, because that's what they do. At least until Iowa came around.
I will say, earlier you touched on one of the reasons why people support him, because all he does is win, so to speak. Also, I believe that one of the main things that entices voters would be, after 8 years of Barack Obama and the Democratic Party pretty much controlling, the government, he's not very politically correct, and there's a part of America that I believe is tired, and it's almost like a symbol of just rebelling against what we've been through for the past 8 years. So that also might be a potential reason why he appeals to GOP voters.
No, that is a very fair point. That goes into what we talked about yesterday, and when most Trump supporters are not supporting policy. They're supporting the man. They're supporting the attitude. They're supporting the rhetoric. Then if you look at it, look at people like Marco Rubio, or look at Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz, who called the leader of the Senate of his party a liar, because he is. And you can look at the records and see that he is. You look at Marco Rubio at the debate that was calling it out President Obama on exactly things that he's done that I think maybe other than Kasich, everyone else is saying things that make sense. He's calling them out on that.
People who love to call people out. Speaking of that, you can include Chris Christie in that category. And going back to one of the things that attracts people to Donald Trump, let me just throw this out there. If the only reason you're voting for a candidate is because he's not politically correct, like, does that make sense? Does that stand up to the show's motto of current campus common sense? Common sense doesn't tell you I vote for a candidate because of one reason,
or because of just what they say.
And the one reason is because he's not PC. I mean, most Republican candidates are not PC by nature. Chris Christie is the most un-PC candidate I think I've ever seen.
But he's also a flaming progressive.
He is, and I am not a Chris Christie fan by any means, but I love the way that when they ask him a question on the debate stage, he answers the question first. It's either yes or it's no. It's never a roundabout answer. It's always yes or no, and then he goes on to explain himself. I like that about Chris Christie. Now, you can say the things about the weight, whatever you want about Chris Christie, that he hugs Obama. I mean, that.
You mean like when he hugged Obama because he had a Twinkie in his pocket and that's what he was trying to get out there?
Yeah. I've heard all the jokes, but I'm not a Chris Christie fan. I love Ted Cruz. All right, and when you think about people that like Ted Cruz, people that like Ted Cruz are people that like proof of what you are going to do. They like people who do what they say they're going to do. And Ted Cruz has been in Congress, and he's been proving over and over again that he will do what he says he would do. Watching the debate, I heard Marco Rubio have a basic short circuit, I think, on the debate stage where he repeated, Barack Obama knows exactly what he's doing, about 4 or 5 times in a row in response to Chris Christie. And I was thinking, I like Marco, so I'm going to look up his record. Marco Rubio's record is far worse than Ted Cruz. If you were rating a conservative on a 1 to 100 basis, Ted Cruz is about a 97%, and Marco Rubio is about 64%.
Right. The only one that actually in the Senate that beats Ted Cruz is Mike Lee. Mike Lee is the only person on that same rating that scored 100, with Ted Cruz 97. But even then, some people that are considered more conservative were scored like Paul Ryan. I think he scored in the 50s or something like that on that same scale. So it shows a lot. But next up, we need to talk about Ben Carson. Poor Ben. He took a break from campaigning to fly back to Florida for fresh clothes, because that was from his campaign. That was what was said. Because there aren't any washing machines, Macy's, or Targets in the state of Iowa. So, of course, he had to fly back home. Now claims that other campaigns played dirty tricks by telling caucus goers he was dropping it out of the race. I don't know if this is true. I don't know if the intent was indeed dirty tricks. However, if that happened, the other campaigns should be ashamed. But it is true that Carson should drop out, period. He came in a distant, non-competitive 4th in Iowa. Arguably, his voters would have been split between Cruz and Rubio, which would have put Trump in 3rd and possibly Ted Cruz with an even greater lead. Now he'll be trounced in New Hampshire. He has no chance in South Carolina. He can't win. He won't win. There's no way of him winning. He has no path to winning. And really, he shouldn't win. You look at some of his answers on some things, and you wonder if the guy has even opened up an intelligence briefing report in his life. His closing statement at a debate was the preamble to the Constitution. And then he said, "Nuff said." What kind of closing remark is that? The only function he serves at this point is siphoning votes from Rubio and Cruz and elevating Trump. If Carson had dropped out before the race, Trump mostly would have come in an embarrassing and utterly delightful third. I think everyone other than Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and Donald Trump should be out at this point. All they're doing is taking away votes. And if you're listening and you're supporting another candidate other than those three, you're being part of the problem as well. I'm sorry. Because you are giving them hope. And all you're doing is allowing Trump to go up top because you're skewing all of the other votes away. So you need to do your patriotic duty and support a candidate as well, even if that is Trump. Support someone that has more than 2%.
I will say, though, like Nick just mentioned, if your candidate does not end up winning the primary, I will say this. Still, we need, no matter who's elected, whether it be Cruz, Rubio, Trump, or even your fourth and fifth place like Ben Carson, Jeb Bush, whoever ends up winning, I will say go out and make sure you vote for the GOP candidate elected, because personally, I can't think of anyone worse than Hillary Clinton that I would have for president.
Bernie Sanders.
Well, yeah, you're right. Bernie Sanders. I mean, look, it's like you're picking the lesser of two evils over here. So, but even if your candidate doesn't get elected as the presidential candidate for the Republican Party, please, I beg of you, go out and vote for whoever is elected. I will be doing the same thing. So just do your due diligence and vote in the general election.
All right, well, now up we have sports, and so Drew Adam is going to talk about some different topics, and so now it's Drew.
All right, I'm ready to take this away. So we've got a story around here that has been dominating the news circuits for the last about 12 hours. It broke last night, and Bills running back LeSean McCoy, which previous to this incident, I thought LeSean McCoy was a great guy. I mean, I've seen his interviews on TV. I've seen the way he interacts with other people. He's very nice. He's very personable. However, LeSean McCoy and Curtis Brinkley, a former San Diego Charger, who are both Philadelphia natives, are now being alleged to have hospitalized two off-duty police officers in a nightclub early Sunday morning in Philadelphia. And Buffalo Bills running back LeSean McCoy and former NFL running back Curtis Brinkley are at the center of this investigation after an alleged altercation with two off-duty police officers in Philadelphia on Sunday. According to the report, the two officers were hospitalized as a result of their injuries, and Fox 29 reported at least one officer suffered a fractured skull, broken ribs, and a broken nose, along with other injuries. There is video from the bar of McCoy, Brinkley, and the officers being thrown out of the bar, but it doesn't appear as though surveillance captured the actual incident. So, again, in this country, innocent until proven guilty, but it does appear as though LeSean McCoy is going to have some answering to do to some questions. And the actual incident has been documented as the police officers ordered a beer at the bar, and the former Pitt football player that was mentioned earlier in the article approached the police officer and attempted to pull the bottle from the police officer's hand. And an argument ensued as to the ownership of the bottle, at which point McCoy, Brinkley, and Christopher Henderson, another football player, assisted the previously mentioned football player. During the altercation, according to the report, Butler was knocked to the ground, punched, kicked, and stomped about his body and head multiple times. And so what we want to do here is we want to look at the facts, and we got some facts here. We got a police report. 40-year-old male complainant number 1, 40-year-old male complainant number 2. The facts are neither McCoy or Brinkley has been arrested at this time. Both are being investigated for aggravated assault because of the injuries suffered by these police officers. And both, like we mentioned before, both are Pennsylvania natives, and none of the alleged participants in this beating have commented at this time on the incident. And I'd like to tie this into what we've been talking about lately on this show, is that this sense of the deterioration of American values and the deterioration of personal responsibility that's been perpetrated by the Democratic Party and the liberal agenda. It's police officers have a target on their back now. because of statements from our president, from Obama, from other black leaders in the black community. And now most African Americans get along with police officers just fine. But there are a few who take it as they see a police officer, even off duty, not even in uniform, and they see it as an opportunity to make a statement. And that puts a target on police officers' backs. And that is unacceptable in the United States of America for our community leaders to have a target on their back, people who are supposed to be keeping us safe. And Nick, if you want to chime in on this at any time, you can go ahead, or Ira, either one. But it sickens me that because of movements like Black Lives Matter, people think that it's okay to harm police officers, to shame police officers publicly. Just today, a Texas newspaper backed off of publishing police officers' names and addresses in their paper so that people who had a beef with police officers could go and find them. I mean, this is just ridiculous. It's getting to the point now. I've had some unfortunate run-ins with police officers, getting tickets, whatever, but most of the time they're very reasonable people, and they're very easy to deal with if you're respectful to them.
You know, one thing that I looked at it as is, you know, police officers, their oath is that they're there to serve and protect. Politicians are here to defend the Constitution. What if we held politicians, every time they had a scandal or they did something that was unconstitutional, to the same bar that we hold rogue police officers that are in the vast majority compared to the vast majority of politicians who don't do what they're supposed to do, that it says in their oath? Why is it just this? And the reason is what we're actually going to go into next. What I believe is part of this whole politically correct crowd. It's that it promotes their agenda. They can make money off this. And when I say they, I mean the elite in the left, the progressives, the socialist Marxists that have infiltrated this country. One example, or many examples, is the Super Bowl. So this morning, my class got out early. I was sitting waiting for the next class to start. I started reading the news. The news was talking about the different Super Bowl commercials and how the left has already come out and attacked these commercials. One of them is the Doritos ultrasound commercial. So what happens if you didn't see this? Basically, the mother is getting an ultrasound. The dad's eating a Dorito. Okay? The baby sees a Dorito on the ultrasound or smells it or something, crawls out, this is just disgusting. Who thought of making this commercial? And grabs the Dorito because the baby wants it so badly. Anyone with a brain can see that what that saying is, people love Doritos and it's supposed to be funny. However, and a pro-choice group came out the next day and was saying how, quote, Doritos is humanizing the fetus. What were they supposed to do it? Animalize it? Make it like it's dead? But that's exactly how they see it. They don't value it as life, when the exact definition of fetus is unborn human.
Unborn human. And the Doritos commercial, I personally thought it was hilarious. And of course, I didn't think anything at the time of the left coming out and trying to skew this.
You're a sane person.
I am a sane person.
For the most part.
For the most part. Now, you'll meet some people who will disagree with you, but for the most part, I'm sane. And I mean, in the commercial, the guy's eating the Doritos. He reaches his hand into the bag, pulls a Dorito out, and the baby sits up in the womb. Which I can see the left saying, oh my gosh, they're saying that a baby in the womb can move.
And can control its own movements.
And can know things.
Like it's intelligent.
Like it has some sort of...
Are you saying that that's possibly a person in there? Don't be stupid. You're at college. It's not a person. It's an it.
It doesn't exist yet.
Right. It doesn't exist. You can't see it.
It doesn't exist.
Just like God. Can't see him, so he doesn't exist. Some of the other commercials, It was the Snickers ad. They said it was transphobic because the guy was Marilyn Monroe. Skirt flew up, he had man legs, and then ate his Snickers and then went back to being pretty. So obviously Snickers has a thing against trans people. The sexist Hyundai ad where Kevin Hart follows his daughter on a date in the car. So obviously that means that females cannot protect themselves. It has nothing to do with being a father and protecting your daughter. What about Beyonce and then the gay pride sermon, because that's what it was. Just everything. You can't even watch football anymore without being bombarded by these leftist ideas. On a milder note, we have some humor today. Poor Jebra Bush. Jebra. He had, well, I'll just play the audio so you can hear for yourself what exactly happened.
So here's my pledge to you. I will be a commander-in-chief that will have the back of the military. I won't trash talk. I won't be a divider-in-chief or an agitator-in-chief. I won't be out there blowharding, talking a big game without backing it up. I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country, to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world.
Here it is.
Please clap.
Yay, Jeb! Yay!
So it's like he gets a medal or a trophy and upward. Is that what politics has become
that's
now?
What that was. That was everyone deserves a trophy.
That's the '90s parenting philosophy has now infiltrated politics. Just for everybody,
if you see the video, you can literally see the point where his heart breaks, and you can tell he's like, "I was next in line. W got it. He's a bumbling idiot." But one thing you should note, the smartest son, at least supposed to be, of the family's name is Jebs, if that tells you anything. But he actually asks them to clap for him. I've been against Jeb Bush this entire time, this entire race, but I really hope he comes in a solid fifth now, a good solid fifth, because I feel bad for the guy. That if it came down between him and Hillary, I'd pull the lever for Jeb just out of sympathy. That this guy really has put so much money, and I don't really feel bad for him, but I sort of do. That he's asking people to clap for him.
Now, if you've been to a Ted Cruz rally or a Donald Trump rally, which I've been to both, even though I support Ted Cruz, I have been to both. People, you don't have to ask people to clap. Ted Cruz got on that stage. People stayed on their feet the entire time he was on the stage. They clapped after every sentence that he said. They didn't have to be prompted because people believe in Ted Cruz, and they could see that Ted Cruz is a natural leader. And Donald Trump, when he got up on that stage, people stood there. I guarantee you there were at least 5,000 people there. They stood the entire hour and a half that he talked. Ira, do you have something to say on this?
I was going to say it was more like 10,000, I believe.
It may have been 10,000. It was in the convention center, and it was packed to the brim. I'm pretty sure there were people standing in the bathrooms to hear Donald Trump speak. Now, whether he can motivate those people to get out and pull the lever for him, I mean, apparently he can't, because look at Iowa. Still, it's pathetic when a politician who has people at his rally that are supposed to be his own supporters, and he can't even motivate them to clap for him, and he has to prompt them.
That shows a big
That's
thing.
ridiculous.
One, if you watch the video, it might have just been the camera angle, but it looked like he was in a classroom almost, and it's like there's 15 people there. You should be able to motivate. Psychologically, the fewer people there, the more you should be able to motivate them to get them to do what they want to do instead of just, doing whatever. This is sad. But enough beating up on Jebra, okay? He's got a tough life already. We're going to move on, and some things are going on in the state of Tennessee with your guns. So Ira is going to cover that, and so we're going to go ahead and go straight into that segment.
All right. So today in the Tennessee legislature, a Senate committee will be considering 4 bills. So these 4 bills are going over, it's a open carry. So it will allow, it'll make it easier for handgun carry permit holders to go armed on college campuses, hold property owners liable for injuries suffered by a carry permit holder, and require private schools to have gun policies. Now, I'll read the definition of open carry. So it is the practice of openly carrying a firearm on one's person in public. So it would allow you to, these 4 bills would possibly allow you to openly carry your handgun on your belt, so to speak, in plain view. And I will now read you those 4 bills. So the Senate Judiciary Committee is set to hear these bills at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time today. So in Nashville, that would be 3:30 local time. The first one is Senate Bill 1736, which it declares a person or business entity posting signs prohibiting guns on the property becomes liable if a handgun carry permit holder is harmed, injured, or killed. So pretty much what it's saying is, if you're saying that you're prohibiting guns on the property and a handgun carry permit holder is hurt, then that place is held responsible.
That's a very good bill. That makes a lot of sense. If you're making it your choice as a business, saying people that have the constitutional right to carry a firearm to defend themselves, and you say they can't come in your establishment, and then something happens to them because you prohibited them from that, I think that's a great idea. You should be liable because it's your fault for making it in that kind of environment.
Okay, the next one, that one is sponsored by Senator Gresham and Somerville, from Somerville, and then Representative Jeremy Faison from Newport. The next bill is Senate Bill 1559. It would require all private K-12 schools and private colleges and universities to implement a written handgun carry policy that either permits or prohibits permit holders to go armed on the school grounds and buildings or parts of the campus. Now that one is sponsored by Senator Mike Bell and Representative Tillman Goins. The third out of the 4 bills would be Senate Bill 2376, and that would allow full-time employees of public colleges, like here at the University of Tennessee, who have handgun carry permits to go armed on any university-owned or controlled property. So that means our different professors and teachers would be able to enforce and use their Second Amendment right, pretty much. So I think that would be a great addition to Tennessee's laws. The fourth and final Senate bill would be Senate Bill 1991, and that would ban state colleges and universities from taking any adverse action against an employee or student with a carry permit for transporting or storing a gun or ammunition in their parked vehicle on campus. So this bill is an expansion of the Guns and Parking Lots Act of 2014 that allowed employees with permits to keep their guns in their vehicles on their employer's property. So this case, the employer would be the University of Tennessee or any other state college or university, and it would allow the students to keep their guns and ammunitions in their cars. So now these 4 bills they haven't been passed yet. They're not law, but in the current news today, they will be heard in a Senate committee that will discuss these things and then possibly be brought up for a vote later on.
All right, well, thank you, Ira. Ira's battling a cold right now, so that was still nice of him to come on today and give his segment. And we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he meant 1:30 for Nashville time, not 3:30, but that's an honest mistake. Next, we're going to end today with a little bit of humor. I'm going to try to keep you up to date on what's going on this while it's playing out. But in case you missed it, this is what went on at the beginning of the GOP debate in New Hampshire. If we can get the audio to work this time.
So let's welcome the candidates for the Republican nomination for president. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie.
Okay, so Christie goes out. Ben Carson starts to, but stops in the threshold. Where's Ben? Still not coming.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
Okay, so now Ted Cruz just walks on by him, smiles like, "What you doing here, bud?" and goes out to the stage.
Further evidence that Ben Carson is clueless.
Donald Trump.
And then Donald Trump and Ben Carson have a
Florida
party.
Senator Marco Rubio.
They just stand there. Rubio passes by Trump. Rubio goes out on stage. So far, Christie, Cruz, and Rubio are out.
Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush.
Okay, now Jeb was kind of funny. He walks by, kind of brushes by Donald Trump, hits his arm a little, and makes this funny face like, "What's this doofus standing here?" You'll have to go watch it.
And Dr. Ben Carson, please come out on the stage. He's
Now,
standing
this
there
is
as well.
the
Dr. Carson.
second time Ben Carson's been called. Second time for Donald Trump. Do they go? No.
And lastly, we welcome back to the debate stage Donald Trump.
But Kasich's still standing there, too. Ben Carson finally went. Now Trump goes.
But Kasich.
And you hear...
Can I
It's
introduce
so noisy in here. Yes, yes.
And you hear
We're
Chris
gonna introduce
Christie
Ohio Governor John
and Marco Rubio say, "Where's Kasich?" The moderators still don't know, and they blame it on that they can't hear. Now, that's fine if the candidates can't hear backstage, but the moderators are sitting right there looking at the stage.
That just shows you how fired up GOP voters are in this election.
I guess so, but
We couldn't hear.
But I just thought that was a really quite funny thing, because for those of you that have never been on a professional production before on stage, there is always someone standing right at the curtain, the stage manager. They're on mics and everything, and they most of the time are holding you until it's your time to go, and then sometimes almost push you out onto stage. And they're on a comm system, so they hear everything that's going on in the mic. So someone wasn't doing their job on this, so that it was their job to make sure the candidates go. So something went on here. I'm not sure what.
Well, I'm not sure what went on either, but what I can tell you is Donald Trump played it very well, I think, waiting on Dr. Carson to go out, because Donald and Dr. Carson and Ben Carson have a lot of mutual respect for each other, and that's evident in the way they talk to each other on stage. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that Donald has a whole lot of respect for Dr. Carson, but Dr. Carson has a whole lot of respect for everybody on the stage,
well, if you look at
who they are.
That is true, but it's also the same respect that Donald Trump and Ted Cruz had before, in both of their words, Cruz started doing better. Everyone thought they were having a bromance, and they were saying how they were to get, the the campaigns together. I would venture to say that, well, if you look at it when Ben Carson was ahead of Trump, they weren't best friends. It's what we talked about yesterday on the mind of Donald Trump. He's a deal maker, which is what is dangerous, and it's why I think the establishment will accept him. And it's because he tries to make you love him. He gives you these gifts, tells everyone how great you are, and then the second you won't do what he wants you to do, you're out. He calls you nasty, a liar, says all these things about you because he's king. And Iowa shows that the king bleeds, that he's not as good as everyone thinks he is. The emperor isn't wearing any clothes. That Donald Trump, once you cross him, it all changes.
Well, we're about to run out of time here, and I agree with you that Donald Trump has he has this complex about him that everyone else is inferior, and if you don't go along with what he wants, then you're no longer a nice person, as he would say. You're just not. I don't know what it is. It's probably partially due to his business success and academics or whatever you want to say. I think that Donald Trump will, ultimately win New Hampshire tonight. We'll see, but I'd be shocked if Donald Trump doesn't win New Hampshire tonight.
All right, well, we'll see about that. I think we might place some bets later. I don't know. But as always, thank you for tuning in to the Nick Crawford Show. We will always be current, campus, and common sense.
You are listening to The Nick Crawford Show. Current,